Hello everybody. In this video, I'd like to go over the most important questions a person could ask in life, which are, does God exist and could it be proven? So why are these questions so important? If God does exist, logic compels us to say that there's a purpose for why He created us in this world. Therefore, it makes sense that if God did create us for a reason, meaning that we have a purpose for being in this world, that we should figure out what the purpose is so that we can fulfill it. The second reason why this question is so important is because we also want to have compelling evidence for God's existence so that we don't live a life of doubt and blind faith. Logically speaking, there must be a reason why God created the world, because it does not make sense to say that He created the world because He was bored. So once we know that God exists and that there must be a purpose for why He created us, we're going to then figure out what the purpose is, and that is where religion comes in. There are many different religions and cults that claim that they know the purpose of why God created the world. Throughout history, there have been thousands of religions and cults, and each one of them claim to be living by the truth. So we have to figure out which religion is actually from God, because most religions and cults conflict with each other in their basic principles, and therefore there could only be one true God-given religion. With that being said, I just want to say that a person should be confident with the beliefs they follow, and they should be confident that these beliefs are worth following so they don't have to live a life of doubt. Therefore, you would do yourself a great favor by learning the answer to these questions so you can determine how you want to live your life. Before we get started, I just want to say that all the information in these slides come from different scientists, books, and speakers, and the true credit goes to them. I just did my best to summarize all their important points without getting caught too much into all the scientific details so that anybody could understand. And since this is just a summary, please try to refer to the other books and videos, and I'll put some of them in the description below. Okay, let's begin by talking about atheists. So, atheists can generally be categorized in two groups. You have something called agnostic atheists. And there are people who these people don't believe or disbelieve God's existence. They simply are not sure about God's existence. On the other hand, we have actual atheists, and they say that with 100% certainty that God does not exist. However, it is impossible to prove that God does not exist. They have no evidence for such a claim. Why? Because if you claim something does not exist, you need to know everything that does exist. And since the atheist doesn't know everything that exists, he can't disprove God, logically speaking. If this is the case, then how do we prove the existence of a creator? God. So we can't prove that God doesn't exist. An atheist can't prove that God doesn't exist, but are we able to prove that God does exist? If we are physical beings, we're bound by our senses. Can we prove something which is not physical? Now, when we want to prove physical things, we use our five senses: seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, and smelling. But since God cannot be sensed through our five senses, we need to use abstract thinking and logic, which is another sense that we have, to conclude whether or not there is evidence for the existence of God. Now, another important point I want to make is that there's so many people who claim that they believe in God's existence. The issue with this is that believing means to have blind faith. To have blind faith means to put trust in something without having logical reason to do so. In life, we want to make decisions based on logic and intellect, not blind faith. Instead, we want to know if God exists, and we don't want to take leaps of faith like many religions say to do. and a good example to explain the difference between believing and knowing. So right now you're probably listening or watching this video while you're sitting on something. Now, do you say to yourself, I believe I'm sitting on a chair, or do you say, I know I'm sitting on a chair? You obviously say, I know, that you believe you're sitting on a chair. Because now, what's the big deal about if you say, I believe I'm sitting on a chair? If you say, if I say right now, I'm sitting on a chair right now. If I say, I believe I'm sitting on a chair, that means I'm not sure whether or not I'm sitting on a chair. But if I say, I know I'm sitting on a chair, that means I know with 100% certainty that I'm sitting on a chair. The word belief comes only when you're not 100% sure about something. So let's say someone is standing behind the door and knocking on the door and you don't know who it is. So you could say, oh, I believe it's so-and-so. But right? So that's when the word belief comes in. But again, we don't want to be people living our life based on belief. I don't want to make decisions in my life if I'm not 100% certain about what I'm doing. So in regards to this case, I don't want to believe in God. I want to know God exists. I want to live a life with certainty and without blind faith. Same thing with you. Because believing means not knowing. Now, this is called the first cause argument of proving God's existence. There are many arguments for proving God's existence, but I want to focus on the ones I think are the strongest. So, there's two options of how the universe came into being. Either the universe always existed, in other words, it didn't have a beginning, or the universe had a beginning. Now, if we say that the universe always existed, and that means if it always existed and it didn't have a beginning, that means no one created it. So, for argument's sake, we could say that doesn't prove. If the universe always existed, then we're still unsure whether or not God exists. That's not a proof. But if we could prove scientifically that the universe had a beginning, and we know everything in life goes with cause and effect. So if I see an effect, which is this universe, there must be something that caused it, right? So same thing with the universe. If the universe had a beginning, that's pointing to a first cause, something that got everything going. So here's a picture to better visualize this idea. We see an infinite universe on the left. It always had a beginning. It always existed without a beginning. And on the right, we see a finite universe. It came into existence at a certain point. So, around the beginning of the 20th century, many scientists, including the famous physicist Albert Einstein, believed that the universe has always existed. And this theory of the universe always existing is called the static universe theory. This theory was ultimately dismissed due to evidence provided by an astronomer named Edward Hubble and other scientists. Right? George LeMay is the other scientist, and a couple other scientists. So Hubble specifically, he discovered that stars and galaxies are moving away from the Earth. Therefore, it means that if the universe is actually expanding. Now, if the universe is expanding, then it must have started expanding at some initial point. It couldn't have always been expanding. To better picture this, let's say you take a video of the universe expanding. So let's go to the next slide. Imagine we take a video of the universe expanding. So you see it in the picture where it says today, that's the universe expanding. Now, imagine we're taking a video of the universe expanding and we rewind the video, we fully rewind the video. And if you keep going towards the left, you'd see that the expanding universe, imagine like a ball expanding, if you rewind the video, eventually it will go back until the ball is much smaller than it was. So if we were able to take a video of the universe expanding and we were to rewind the video, we would see that the universe had a starting point. And in recent years, many scientific studies support this idea that the universe had a beginning and is currently expanding. And they call this theory the Big Bang Theory. So what is the Big Bang Theory? So the Big Bang Theory is a theory that explains what happened at the very beginning of our universe. The theory states that there was an extremely hot, extremely small, and dense ball of energy that began to expand rapidly, as you can see in the picture. So eventually, it began to cool down into something similar to what we see today: the galaxies, the stars, and the planet, especially planet Earth. Now, the majority of scientists nowadays who study cosmology claim that the Big Bang Theory matches closely to what they have observed so far. Now, now that we know that the Big Bang, now that we know what the Big Bang is, the next question we can ask is, what was before the Big Bang? And this theory is called ex nihilo theory. So as you can see actually in this picture, whatever's in this, let's say, cup, it looks kind of like a cup, right? So just for simplification, let's call it a cup. So that cup is the universe, and it's kind of, you're looking at it from the side, and it's expanding. Now, whatever's in that cup is the physical universe. But the question is, what's outside the cup? What was, or a better question, better way of saying it, what was before the Big Bang? So, what's before the Big Bang? The answer is nothingness. Nothing. And what happened? We went from a state of nothing. We went from a state of nothing to something. So ex nihilo theory means nothing to something theory. We got something from nothing. Now, what does it mean, nothing? What's nothing? So, trying to explain the idea of nothingness is like trying to explain it's like trying to explain someone who's blind from birth the color blue. You say it looks like green. You never seen green. It looks like whatever, a mix of certain colors. The concept of nothingness is something that we physically can't understand, but conceptually speaking, we know what it means when we say nothingness. So we have somewhat of an idea of what nothingness means. So going back to what we said before, we said that the Big Bang started with a ball of energy expanding and cooling down. Now, if that's the case, let's examine the first law of thermodynamics, which is also known as the law of conservation of energy. And this law states that energy can neither be destroyed or created. It can only be transferred from one form to another. So we just said energy can be, thermodynamics, the laws of physics tell us that energy can be created or destroyed. So the question is, the Big Bang states that we had a ball, let's say a ball of energy, and that began to rapidly expand and cool down. And that's like how the universe started, from this ball of matter, energy. So the question is, if energy can't be created or destroyed, how the heck did that energy get there in the first place? In other words, who or what started the universe? So again, many people are going to tell you, oh, who or what started the universe? The Big Bang. But again, that doesn't answer how the initial energy got there in the first place. It just explains what happened once we got the energy. However, the real question is, how did the matter get there in the first place? And when I say matter, it really means energy. I'm interchanging the words, so don't be confused by that. So how did the energy get there in the first place? Most scientists today still can't explain what caused the Big Bang and what happened before, when there was a state of nothingness. But once there's energy, scientists are able to explain how everything came from it. But there is absolutely no solid explanation of how this energy came into existence from nothingness before the Big Bang. Now, once we claim the universe is finite, and finite is another way of saying limited or physical. And when you say limited or physical, you're saying that it has a size, age, weight, shape, etc. Now, if we claim that the universe is finite, it's limited and physical because it has a size, age, weight, and shape, it must be that something that is not finite and physical had to create it, because things don't make themselves exist. Everything finite must have a source. And if space and time are creation, like Albert Einstein demonstrated with his theory of relativity, then there must be a power beyond space and beyond time that created this universe. And due to our finite existence, it makes sense why we can't comprehend such a power. Now here's like a better picture of it. So we know humans, animals, and plants, right? We're physical beings, and we came from the earth, right? Even the Torah says that came from the earth. Now, where did the earth come from? The earth is physical. Where did that come from? The Big Bang. So we see humans are physical. We came from the earth, which is physical. Earth is physical, came from the Big Bang. That's physical. But whatever created the Big Bang cannot be physical. Because if you say that's physical and finite, right? Again, finite and physical, it's kind of like very similar. If you're saying that the Big Bang is finite and physical, whatever created the Big Bang cannot be finite and cannot be physical. Or else, what created that and what created that? And it will never end. And again, things don't just always exist, right? Things don't make themselves exist. So whatever thing created the Big Bang, it can't be physical and finite. So scientists say that before the Big Bang can occur, scientists say that in order to create something from absolute nothingness, it can be done as long as there are a set of 4 forces. These forces are not physical, they act on the physical, they created the physical from nothing, and they predate the universe, meaning these forces existed before the universe. Now if you put all these things together, it sounds very familiar. These forces are the biblical definition of God. We know that God, the Bible says, right, the Torah says that God's not physical. God acts on the physical. And it also says that God created the physical world from a state of nothingness. And it also tells us that God predates the universe. He existed before the universe. And time began at the first instance of the Big Bang, when the energy is there. Albert Einstein proved that once you have energy and once you have matter, you have material, you have time. So before the Big Bang, when there was no material, there was no time. So whatever created the Big Bang existed before time. And we know these all point to the definition of God. Now some scientists want to call it forces. Some people want to call it different definitions. Whatever people like to call it, it doesn't matter. We call it God, right? But you want to call it God, causes, first being, first cause, it doesn't matter. But the most important thing is that everyone agrees that there was a first cause. That's the important part. That there's a first cause to the universe. And we just call the first cause a God. And okay, well, that doesn't answer the question of if this first being that caused everything to being is still actively involved in the world. That we'll get to in the next couple of videos. But again, everyone agrees that there's a first cause, that something got this whole process going. Again, we don't know what it is because we're limited, we're finite, we're physical. But again, we have an idea, conceptually speaking, that something must have got everything going. Now, in regards to Judaism claims that there's a primary being who brought all existence into being from a state of nothingness. Now, as I said before, some people try to claim that just because we don't know what was before the Big Bang, when there was a state of nothingness, it does not mean that it was God. But the answer is that even though people might call this primary being by different names, it still does not mean that this being does not exist. We simply call this quote-unquote being, which is the first cause of all by bringing everything to existence, God. Moreover, the Big Bang only explains what happens once we got the energy and dash matter. And therefore, the Big Bang could be an explanation of how God, this being, this first cause of all existence, created the universe. And again, even if a Big Bang theory was true, because it's still a theory, but it still does not answer how the energy got there in the first place. And to the people who attempt to use the Big Bang as a theory, like as a proof that there's no creator, that's a huge mistake. The Big Bang theory does not specify what caused the creation. Again, that's under intense scientific debate, but scientists just don't know. And the Torah gives us the answer, it's God. So that's the first cause argument of proving God. In the next video, we're going to talk about the next theory of proving God, which is called intelligent design theory.